Hello friends. Welcome to the Ben 10 What Ifs. How are you all? So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Ben 10 awakened the dragon Omnitrix and got Harem of Kai, Attea and Gwen. Also be sure to subscribe and like this video. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. Scales of Destiny. The desert sun beat down mercilessly on the archaeological dig site, casting harsh shadows across the excavated ruins. Kai Green wiped sweat from her brow, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail as she carefully brushed sand away from what appeared to be an ancient stone tablet. For 3 weeks, her team had been excavating this previously undiscovered site near the Chemehuevi Mountains, following fragmentary references in obscure Navajo texts to a Temple of the Sky Serpents. "Dr. Hakim, could you take a look at this?" Kai called, not taking her eyes off the unusual markings that spiraled across the tablet's surface. The symbols led no written language she recognized, curved lines intersecting with angular patterns that seemed almost mathematical in their precision. Dr. Hakim crouched beside her, adjusting his glasses. "Extraordinary. These don't match any known Native American petroglyph patterns." His finger hovered over but didn't touch the surface. "And look at the material. This isn't local stone." Kai nodded, her excitement building. "The iridescence in the black material, it almost looks metallic." She reached for her specialized brush, clearing more of the ancient dust. "And there's something else beneath it." As the last grains of sand fell away, both archaeologists gasped. Embedded in the center of the tablet was a crystalline object no larger than a playing card, pulsing with a faint crimson light. It seemed to intensify as Kai leaned closer. "Don't touch it, Drive," Hakim warned, but Kai's hand was already reaching forward, drawn by an inexplicable compulsion. The moment her fingers made contact with the crystal, a jolt of energy surged through her body. Visions flashed behind her eyes. Massive winged creatures soaring through unfamiliar skies, stars arranged in patterns she'd never seen, and a spiral of energy connecting worlds like beads on a cosmic string. "Kai, are you all right, Doctor?" Hakim's voice seemed distant. She blinked, disoriented. Yes, but something happened when I touched it." Looking down, she realized the crystal had detached from the tablet and now rested in her palm, its glow subsided to a subtle shimmer. "It came loose." "That's impossible. It was fused with the stone." Kai stared at the artifact, turning it over in her hand. "I think it was waiting to be found." She carefully placed the crystal in a specimen bag. "And I think I know exactly who needs to see this. Happy birthday, doofus." Gwen's voice carried across the backyard of Ben's parents' home, where multicolored streamers hung from trees and tables laden with food awaited the guests. Ben Tennyson, now officially 18 years old, grinned as his cousin approached with a neatly wrapped package. "Let me guess, a book on responsibility," he quipped, accepting the gift with a theatrical bow. "Very funny." Gwen rolled her eyes, but her smile remained. "Just open it." Ben tore through the wrapping paper to reveal a custom leather jacket, black with green trim that matched the color of the Omnitrix on his wrist. Embroidered subtly on the back was a stylized hourglass symbol. "Whoa," he ran his fingers over the material. "This is actually cool." "Try not to sound so surprised," Gwen said, punching his arm lightly. "I figured now that you're an adult, technically speaking, you might want to update your look a bit." Ben slipped the jacket on, finding it fit perfectly. "How do I look?" "Like someone who still has cake on his face from blowing out the candles," she replied, gesturing to a spot on his cheek. As Ben wiped his face, Kevin Levin approached, carrying 2 plates of birthday cake. "Looking sharp, Tennyson. The jacket almost makes you look like you could handle yourself in a real fight. Says the guy who I've beaten, what, dozens of times now." Ben retorted, accepting the cake Kevin offered. "In your dreams," Kevin scoffed, but there was no malice in his tone. Their once bitter rivalry had evolved into a solid friendship over the years, though neither would ever fully admit it. Ben surveyed the gathering, his parents chatting with Grandpa Max near the grill, various plumbers who could make it to Earth for the occasion mingling with his human friends, and even a few reformed former enemies who'd become allies. After years of defending the universe, he'd built connections across galaxies. His eyes drifted to the Omnitrix on his wrist, the device that had defined his life since he was 10 years old. Azimuth had upgraded it yet again last year, streamlining its functionality and adding several new alien transformations. Sometime, Ben wondered what his life would have been like without it. Simpler, certainly, but also emptier. Earth to Ben, Kevin said, waving a hand in front of his face. Your mom's trying to get your attention. Ben looked up to see his mother gesturing toward the gate, where a new arrival stood. His breath caught momentarily as he recognized Kai Green, looking nothing like the dusty archaeologist she'd been just hours earlier. She'd changed into a casual blue dress, her long dark hair cascading over her shoulders, a small bag clutched in her hand. I didn't know you invited her, Gwen said quietly, following his gaze. I didn't, Ben replied, equally surprised. His history with Kai was complicated. Their brief romantic connection as children had dissolved into occasional professional collaboration as teenagers. They hadn't spoken in nearly a year. Ben made his way across the lawn, noticing how conversations quieted slightly as he passed. Despite years in the public eye as a hero, he found the attention disconcerting at times. Kai, he greeted her with a genuine smile. This is unexpected. Happy birthday, Ben. She returned the smile, though there was tension in her eyes. Sorry to crash your party. I wouldn't have come unannounced, but... She glanced around at the various guests. I found something on my dig site. Something I think you should see. Before Ben could respond, the sky darkened suddenly as if a storm had materialized from nowhere. Guests looked up in confusion as a massive shadow passed overhead. Please tell me that's some kind of birthday surprise, Kevin said. Joining them at the gate, Ben's Omnitrix began to pulse with alert signals. Not mine, he said grimly, already striding toward the center of the yard for a better view. The Shadow belonged to a spacecraft unlike any Ben had encountered before. Its surface resembled burnished copper with vein-like patterns etched across the hull. It hovered silently above Bellwood, nearly a quarter-mile in length. Identification patterns don't match any known species in the Plumber database, Grandpa Max announced, checking his specialized wristwatch. And they're not responding to standard hailing frequencies. So much for a day off, Ben muttered, rolling his shoulders as the familiar anticipation of battle replaced his relaxed mood. The ship's underside opened, releasing dozens of smaller craft that descended toward the city. From this distance, they looked like metallic insects, their joined limbs gleaming in the afternoon sun. Everyone get inside, Ben ordered, his voice shifting automatically into command mode. Plumbers, coordinate with me. Gwen, Kevin, already on it, Kevin replied, absorbing the metal from a nearby chair as Gwen's hands began to glow with mana. Kai stepped forward. Ben, the artifact. I think it might be related to this. The symbols on that ship match what I found in the ruins. Ben glanced at her sharply. Show me, quickly. She opened her bag and carefully extracted the crystal, which immediately began to pulse with brighter light in proximity to Ben. That's weird, he said, reaching toward it instinctively. Ben, don't, Kai started, but her warning came too late. The moment Ben's fingers touched the crystal, it reacted violently, emitting a blinding flash of crimson energy. Ben felt the familiar tingle of the Omnitrix activating. But something was different. The energy wasn't confined to the device but seemed to flow through his entire body. What's happening? He gasped, watching in shock as the Omnitrix's traditional green glow shifted to deep red. Then purple, then a burnished gold. Ben, Gwen shouted, rushing toward him as he fell to his knees. The crystal dissolved into particles of light that spiraled around Ben's arm before being absorbed into the Omnitrix. The device reconfigured itself before their eyes. The familiar hourglass symbol remained, but now set within what appeared to be a stylized dragon's claw. Systems recalibrating, announced the Omnitrix in a voice deeper and more resonant than before. Dracomnitrix protocols initializing. Pain shot through Ben's arm as unfamiliar energy coursed through his veins. Through gritted teeth, he managed to say, "Everyone get back." The attacking ships were now visible above the neighborhood, their weapons systems charging with ominous light. Nay fired a blast directly at the gathering, and instinctively, Ben slammed his hand down on the transformed Omnitrix. The transformation felt unlike any he'd experienced before, not just a change of form but something deeper. As if his very essence was being rewritten. His consciousness expanded and contracted simultaneously, new senses awakening as his body shifted. When the light faded, Ben was gone. In his place stood a creature that made even his most powerful alien forms seem mundane by comparison. 9 feet tall with iridescent scales that shifted between emerald and gold, a powerful tail that cracked like a whip as it moved, and wings that spanned 20 feet when fully extended. His head was distinctly draconic, with horns that curved backward from his temples, and eyes that glowed with inner fire. "Whoa," the transformed Ben said, his voice a rumbling bass that seemed to vibrate the air itself. "This is new." The energy blast from the alien ship struck him directly, but instead of harming him, the energy seemed to be absorbed into his scales, causing them to glow more intensely. "Ben." Gwen approached cautiously, her hands still glowing with defensive mana. "Is that you in there?" "Yeah, it's me. Just upgraded, I guess." He flexed clawed hands experimentally. "I'm calling this one Dragonfire." Kevin whistled low. "That's actually a decent name for once." Ore blasts rained down from the invading ships, forcing the party guests to scatter for cover. Ben, now Dragonfire, spread his wings and launched himself skyward with a powerful thrust that cracked the concrete beneath his feet. Flying came to him instinctively, as if he'd been born with wings. He intercepted the nearest attack ship and discovered another surprise, when he opened his mouth to speak. What emerged instead was a concentrated stream of golden flame that melted through the ship's hull like paper. "Okay, that's definitely useful," he muttered, banking sharply to avoid return fire. Below, he could see Gwen creating mana shields to protect the civilians while Kevin and the plumber agents engaged the few craft that had landed. Kai stood in the center of the yard, staring upward with an expression of awe and recognition. 3 more ships converged on Ben, firing what appeared to be energy nets designed to entangle rather than destroy. With a roar that shook windows for blocks around, Ben exhaled another blast of flame, but this time concentrated it into a spinning vortex that swept outward in all directions, incinerating the nets and damaging the ship's guidance systems. His sensation was intoxicating, power unlike anything he'd experienced before, even as Alien X or Atomics. He could feel energy coursing through his body, responding to his thoughts almost before he formed them. "Ben." Grandpa Max's voice came through the communicator still somehow integrated into this new form. "The mothership is positioning over downtown. We're getting readings of a massive energy buildup." Dragonfire growled, a sound that rumbled like distant thunder. On it, he accelerated toward the center of Bellwood, his new form cutting through the air with incredible speed. As he approached the massive ship, he noticed something strange. Symbols along its hull were lighting up in sequence, matching the patterns Kai had shown him on the crystal. The ship's underside opened, revealing not weapons but what appeared to be a massive device, concentric rings surrounding a pulsing core that glowed with the same crimson energy as the crystal. "That can't be good," Ben muttered, hovering at a safe distance to assess the situation. "Ben, do you copy?" It was Kai's voice now, breathless as if she was running. "Those symbols, they're not just decorative. From what I can translate, they're some kind of activation sequence." Quote, "Activation for what? I don't know exactly, but the texts referred to opening the way and bridging realms. I think." Her voice was cut off as the device on the ship fully activated, projecting a massive beam of energy directly into the sky. The air itself seemed to ripple and tear where the beam struck, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness beyond. "They're opening a portal," Ben realized aloud. But to where? He didn't wait for an answer. Drawing on instinct he didn't know he possessed, Dragonfire inhaled deeply, feeling energy concentrate in his chest before releasing it in a concentrated beam of golden fire directed at the ship's device. The 2 energy streams collided with catastrophic force, creating a shockwave that knocked Ben backward through the air. For a moment, the portal's expansion halted, energy patterns stabilizing as the 2 forces reached equilibrium. Then, with a sound like reality itself tearing, the portal collapsed in on itself, but not before something emerged from its depths. A massive shape, dark and sinuous, visible for just a moment before both it and the energy field vanished completely. The alien mothership, its device apparently damaged by Ben's attack, began to retreat, smaller craft returning to its holds as it ascended rapidly toward the upper atmosphere. Dragonfire pursued, determined not to let them escape. But as he approached, the Omnitrix symbol on his chest began to flash. "No, not now," he growled, but the transformation was already reversing itself. In midair, Ben returned to human form, the sudden shock of the change leaving him disoriented as he began to fall. Before panic could set in, he felt the familiar sensation of being caught in one of Gwen's mana fields as his cousin flew toward him on a platform of glowing energy. "I've got you," she called, lowering them both safely to a rooftop. Ben staggered slightly as his feet touched down, his entire body tingling with residual energy. "Thanks for the save. What happened up there?" Gwen asked, her expression concerned as she took in Ben's appearance. Ben looked down at himself, surprised to find that even in human form, something had changed. Faint scale-like patterns were visible on his forearms, disappearing beneath the sleeves of his new jacket, and when he caught his reflection in a nearby window, he noticed his eyes had changed color, the irises now a golden green with slightly elongated pupils. "I'm not sure," he admitted, examining the transformed Omnitrix. Its appearance had stabilized into a more elegant design, the faceplate resembling burnished gold with the hourglass symbol inlaid in emerald. But whatever that crystal did, it wasn't just a new alien form. "It feels different, like the Omnitrix is evolving." Kevin and Kai joined them on the rooftop moments later, having been brought up by a plumber transport. "Dude, what was that?" Kevin demanded, gesturing wildly. "Since when can you turn into a freaking dragon? I've never seen anything like it," Kai said, studying Ben with professional interest that barely masked deeper emotions. The legends at the dig site meant Ioned guardians with the power of celestial serpents, but I thought it was metaphorical. Ben flexed his hand, watching as the scale pattern briefly became more pronounced before fading again. "It doesn't feel like the other transformations. Usually, I'm me controlling an alien body. This felt more like the form was already part of me, just waiting to be awakened." Whatever it was, it worked, Grandpa Max said as he joined them, slightly out of breath from climbing the roof access stairs. "The ship has left Earth's atmosphere and appears to be leaving the system. But our sensors detected something else, the object that came through the portal before it collapsed." "I saw it," Ben confirmed. "Any idea what it was?" Max shook his head grimly. "It vanished from our scans almost immediately. But the energy signature it left behind matches what we're now reading from your Omnitrix." All eyes turned to the device on Ben's wrist. "So what you're saying," Ben said slowly, "is whatever came through that portal is somehow connected to whatever the Omnitrix is turning into." "The Dracomnitrix," Kai supplied. "That's what it called itself during the recalibration." "Great," Ben sighed. "Just what I needed on my birthday. Another cosmic mystery and a new watch to figure out." As if responding to his words, the Dracomnitrix pulsed with golden light, and for a brief moment, Ben thought he heard a voice, ancient and powerful, whispering at the edge of his consciousness, "The awakening has begun." Asterisk. Back at Plumber headquarters beneath Bellwood, the mood was tense, as technicians analyzed data from the encounter while medical staff examined Ben. Hovering displays showed magnified images of the scale patterns that now appeared on his skin whenever the Dracomnitrix was active, alongside energy readings that fluctuated in ways that baffled even the most experienced plumber scientists. "The molecular structure of your cells is showing subtle but significant changes, Drive. Bordis, the chief medical officer, explained as he studied a holographic display of Ben's DNA. "Nothing dangerous. In fact, quite the opposite. Your cellular regeneration rate has increased by approximately 300%, and there are novel energy patterns integrated throughout your nervous system." "So what you're saying is," Ben clarified, sitting on an examination table with sensors attached to his chest and temples, "I'm part dragon now, even when I'm not transformed." Dr. Bordis tilted his bulbous head, his three eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of thoughtful consideration in his species. "In simplified terms, yes. The energy from the artifact appears to have permanently altered your baseline physiology. The Omnitrix, or Dracomnitrix, as it now calls itself, seems to be facilitating this integration rather than causing it." Across the room, Kai was working with another team, comparing the symbols from the archaeological site with those recorded on the alien ship. Her expertise in xenoarchaeology had earned her temporary clearance in the facility, though several plumbers still watched her work with cautious expressions. "I've got partial matches on 3 symbol clusters," she announced, highlighting sections of the display. "They recur in both the ruins and on the ship's hull. Preliminary translation suggests concepts relating to gateway, guardian, and celestial scale." Grandpa Max nodded, his weathered face grave. "And the ship itself? Any identification?" A technician shook her head. "Nothing in any known database, sir. The construction materials include several elements not found on the periodic table. It's technology beyond even Galvan understanding." "Which is saying something," added a familiar voice from the doorway. All heads turned to see a small, gray-skinned figure standing on a hovering platform. Despite his diminutive size, his presence immediately commanded respect, and in Ben's case, a slight wariness. "Azimuth," Ben acknowledged, sliding off the examination table. "Let me guess, you're here to tell me I've broken the Omnitrix again." The Galvan creator of the Omnitrix studied Ben with an unreadable expression. "On the contrary, Ben Tennyson. For once, this modification was not your doing. Though I cannot say I approve of it." He directed his platform toward the diagnostic equipment, examining the readings with narrowed eyes. "The artifact you encountered was not meant to be found, certainly not by humans, and most definitely not by the wielder of the Omnitrix." "You know what it is?" Kai asked, approaching cautiously. Azimuth gave her a measured look. "I know of it. The crystal was one of several keys created by a splinter faction of Galvan scientists over 100,000 years ago, before my time, but not beyond my historical knowledge. They were obsessed with parallel dimensional theory, particularly regarding realms where draconic entities evolved as the dominant species." "Wait," Ben interrupted, "are you saying dragons are real? Like actual dragons?" "In a manner of speaking," Azimuth replied with the patience one might grant a particularly slow student. "Not the fire-breathing monsters of human mythology, but beings that evolved along similar morphological lines in other dimensional planes. The rogue scientists believed these entities possessed unique energy signatures that could be harnessed for various purposes: dimensional travel, energy production, even temporal manipulation." Grandpa Max frowned deeply. "And the ship that attacked? Were they after the crystal?" "More likely, they detected its activation." Azimuth turned to study the Dracomnitrix on Ben's wrist. The crystal keys were designed to locate and awaken dormant dragon energy that, it seems, you now possess in abundance, Ben Tennyson. Ben looked down at his hands, which briefly shimmered with scale patterns as he flexed them. "So what happens now? Can you remove it? Return the Omnitrix to normal?" For the first time, Azimuth looked genuinely concerned. "I'm afraid not. The integration is too complete. The crystal's energy has bonded with both the Omnitrix and your own genetic structure. Attempting to separate them now would likely prove fatal." The room fell silent as this information sank in. "Then I guess I'll just have to learn to control it," Ben said finally, with a determined set to his jaw. "It wouldn't be the first time the Omnitrix has thrown me a curveball." Azimuth studied him for a long moment. "Your attitude is commendable, if typically reckless. But understand this, what you now possess is far more dangerous than anything the original Omnitrix contained. Dragon energy is fundamentally connected to the fabric of reality itself. In the wrong hands, or used improperly, it could tear apart the barriers between dimensions. Which is exactly what those aliens were trying to do, Kai realized. Open a gateway between worlds. Indeed, Azimuth nodded. And they will try again. The emergence of a new dragon energy source, Ben, will not go unnoticed by those who seek such power. Before anyone could respond to this ominous statement, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Screens flickered to emergency status as a plumber operative rushed into the room. Multiple dimensional anomalies detected across the city, she reported. Energy signatures match what came through the portal earlier. Show me, Max ordered, and the main display shifted to a map of Bellwood, where dozens of red dots pulsed at various locations. Ben stepped forward, the Dracomnitrix glowing in response to the alert. Looks like I get to test out these new powers sooner rather than later. Ben, wait, Azimuth cautioned. You have no idea what you're facing or how to properly control these transformations. When have I ever? Ben replied with a confidence that wasn't entirely forced. I'll figure it out. I always do. He turned to Gwen and Kevin, who had been silently observing from nearby. You guys with me? Kevin cracked his knuckles. Like you need to ask. We should split up to cover more ground, Gwen suggested, already summoning her mana. These anomalies are too widespread for us to tackle together. Kai stepped forward. I'm coming too. My research might help identify what we're dealing with. Ben hesitated, then nodded. Pair up. Gwen with Kevin, Kai with me. Grandpa, coordinate from here with Azimuth. We'll need all the technical support we can get. As they prepared to depart, Ben noticed something odd about how the others were looking at him. A mixture of wariness and something else he couldn't quite identify. It wasn't until he caught his reflection in a polished panel that he understood. His eyes were glowing faintly, and his stance had changed, more commanding. More assured than his usual demeanor. The Omnitrix wasn't just changing his body, it was changing something deeper within him. And as he activated the device, selecting the Drago N form that now appeared first in its holographic display, Ben wondered fleetingly if he would still be himself when this was over. The transformation washed over him, golden light spiraling around his body as he once again took the form of Dragonfire. This time, with the immediate danger past, he could fully appreciate the sensations, enhanced vision that could perceive energy patterns in the air. Hearing so acute he could detect heartbeats across the room, and a strange new sense that seemed to perceive the very fabric of space around him. Let's fly, he said to Kai, carefully lifting in clawed hands before launching through the specialized exit tunnel designed for aerial transformations. As they emerged into the night sky over Bellwood, Ben saw them, tears in reality, shimmering like heat mirages at various points across the city, and moving between them, barely visible except to his enhanced vision, were sinuous shapes that reminded him of the creature he'd glimpsed emerging from the portal. Ben, Kai said, her voice steady despite their altitude, look at the stars. He glanced upward and felt a chill despite his dragon form's internal heat. The familiar constellations were still visible, but overlaid upon them, visible only to his transformed eyes, was another pattern entirely, stars that shouldn't exist in Earth's sky, arranged in formations that pulsed with same energy that now flowed through his veins. It's starting, he murmured, understanding washing over him from some knowledge that wasn't his own. The convergence of realms, as if in response to his words. The largest of the dimensional tiers expanded suddenly, tearing open the night sky above downtown Bellwood. Through the rift, a massive shape emerged, a creature that dwarfed even Dragonfire's impressive form. Its body a living constellation of starlight and shadow. It turned eyes like twin galaxies toward Ben and spoke directly into his mind in a voice that resonated with ancient power. Dragon Bearer. The boundaries fall. The Order of Scales calls you to your duty. Asterisk. The creature extended wings that seemed to span the very horizon, and as they unfurled, more rifts tore open across the sky, dozens. Then hundreds of gateways between worlds. Ben felt the Omnitrix pulse in response, and knew with sudden certainty that his life had changed irrevocably. Whatever destiny had been set in motion when he found the original Omnitrix as a child, it had now evolved into something far greater and more terrifying. Hold on, he told Kai, tightening his grip protectively around her as he accelerated toward the largest rift. This is going to get complicated. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Royal Refuge. 3 days after the dimensional rifts appeared over Bellwood, Ben stood atop the rebuilt plumber headquarters, watching the sunrise paint the sky in hues of amber and gold. Sleep had become elusive since his transformation, his mind constantly alive with unfamiliar energies and half-remembered dreams of soaring through star-filled voids. The scales that had first appeared on his forearms now occasionally manifested across his shoulders and spine when his emotions ran high. A constant reminder of his changing physiology. The cosmic dragon entity, which had identified itself only as an emissary of the Order of Scales, had vanished as quickly as it had appeared, along with the largest rifts. Smaller tiers in reality continued to manifest randomly throughout the city, each releasing bizarre creatures that seemed to exist halfway between dimensions. The plumbers had established containment protocols, but Ben knew they were merely treating symptoms of a much larger problem. Thought I might find you up here, came Grandpa Max's voice from behind him. The sunrise has always had a way of putting things in perspective. Ben didn't turn, does it? Because I've been watching the sun come up every morning since this happened, and I still have no idea what I'm dealing with. Max joined him at the edge of the rooftop. Azimuth's analysis of the Omnitrix is showing progress. The energy signatures are stabilizing, at least. And the changes to my DNA. A moment of hesitation, still ongoing, but at a slower rate. The good news is that your human form remains dominant. The dragon aspects seem to be integrating rather than overriding. Ben snorted, small wisp of smoke escaping his nostrils, another new development that had startled him the first time it happened. So I'm only partially turning into something else. Great. You've always been changing, Ben, Max said quietly. From the moment you found the Omnitrix. This is just more visible than before. Ben finally turned to face his grandfather, knowing his eyes would be glowing slightly in the early morning light. The difference is, I could always take the Omnitrix off. This, he gestured to himself, is becoming who I am. Before Max could respond, their communicators chimed simultaneously. The older man answered first. Magister Tennyson, sir, came the voice of plumber Molly Gunther. We've detected an Inkerseen ship entering Earth's atmosphere on approach vector to headquarters. They're broadcasting on emergency channels. Ben's eyes narrowed. The Inkerseens. What do they want now? Unknown, but they're requesting immediate landing clearance and political asylum. Ben and Max exchanged surprised glances. The Inkerseen Empire, ruled by the warmongering Milius, was one of the most aggressive forces in the galaxy. They didn't request asylum, they conquered. Identity of the vessel, Max asked. It's the royal shuttle, sir. And, the transmission is from Princess Attea herself. Attea. Ben's surprise was evident. The Inkerseen princess was as ruthless as her father. And their last encounter had left neither with warm feelings toward the other. This has to be a trick. Maybe, Max conceded, but if she's genuinely seeking asylum, there could be serious political implications. Prep the landing bay and full security protocols. We'll meet her there. As they headed for the elevator, Ben's mind raced. Attea on Earth meant trouble, whether she came as friend or foe. The Royal Inkerseen shuttle was sleek and ornate, clearly designed for speed rather than combat. As its engines powered down in the plumber headquarters landing bay, 24 agents formed a perimeter. Weapons at the ready. Ben stood at the forefront beside Grandpa Max, the Omnitrix pulsing gently on his wrist as if sensing his tension. The shuttle's hatch hissed open, releasing a cloud of vapor that momentarily obscured the entrance. When it cleared, Princess Attea stood framed in the doorway, but not as Ben remembered her. Gone was the haughty, confident conqueror. This Attea looked haggard, with a hastily bandaged wound on her shoulder and her royal attire torn and stained. Her characteristic smirk was replaced by an expression of wary exhaustion. Behind her, only 2 Inkerseen guards remained, both looking equally battle-worn. Well, she said, her voice maintaining a shadow of its usual mocking tone despite her appearance. If it isn't the famous Ben Tennyson, still playing hero for the plumbers. Ben crossed his arms. And if it isn't Princess Attea, suddenly in need of the help she used to mock. Funny how things change. She descended the ramp slowly. Her movements careful, either from injury or caution, Ben couldn't tell. Trust me, Tennyson, you weren't my first choice. But when half the galaxy is hunting you, options get limited fast. Hunting you. Max stepped forward, his expression professional but guarded. Perhaps you should explain why the heir to the Inkerseen Empire is seeking protection from Earth. Attea's eyes darted around the hangar, taking in the armed plumbers. Not here. Somewhere secure. My shuttle might have been tracked, and I've got enough holes in me already. Max nodded to his officers. Escort the princess and her guards to secure conference room 1. Full protocols. As the plumbers moved to comply, Ben noticed something strange. The Omnitrix's pulse had intensified, its glow. Shifting through colors in Attea's presence. She noticed it too, her amphibian eyes widening slightly. That's new, she commented, nodding toward his wrist. Upgrade the fashion disaster. Something like that. Ben replied noncommittally. Let's just say I've had some changes recently too. Haven't we all? She muttered, allowing herself to be escorted away. Ben fell into step beside his grandfather. You believe her about being hunted? I believe she's in trouble, Max replied. Whether it's the kind she claims is another matter. But the Inkerseen Empire doesn't often experience internal conflict. They're too disciplined under Milius. Are too terrified of him, Ben added. Max nodded grimly. Either way, if there's been a shift in power serious enough to send Attea running to us for help, we need to know about it. The secure conference room was austere but comfortable, designed for diplomatic meetings rather than interrogations. Attea sat rigidly in one chair. While her guards stood at attention behind her, their eyes constantly scanning the room despite having surrendered their weapons at the door. Ben, Max, and Magister Patelade represented the plumbers, with several security officers monitoring from an adjacent room. Kai had also been invited, given her expertise in cross-species diplomacy from her archaeological work. So, Ben began once everyone was settled. Want to tell us why the daughter of our sworn enemy is suddenly begging for our protection? Attea's lips tightened. I don't beg, Tennyson. Not even when my father's generals are trying to mount my head on the palace wall. Quote, a coup. Max leaned forward, his interest sharpening. Give the human a prize, Attea replied sarcastically, then winced as the movement aggravated her shoulder wound. 3 days ago, General Sang seized control of the Imperial fleet while my father was on a diplomatic mission to the Gamma Quadrant. By the time word reached the palace, half the royal guard had already defected. And your father? Patelade asked. A flash of genuine emotion crossed Attea's face before she masked it. Captured. Possibly dead, though Sang would be smarter to keep him alive as a hostage. Why would Sang move against the Empire now? Max pressed. Milius has ruled unchallenged for decades. Attea's gaze flickered briefly to the Omnitrix before returning to Max. Because something changed. 3 days ago, energy readings spiked across multiple sectors, energy that matched ancient Inkerseen legends about the Great World Bridges. Sang has always been obsessed with the old myths, especially those about powerful weapons hidden between dimensions. Ben felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. 3 days ago. That's when your little light show happened. Attea finished for him, nodding toward the Omnitrix. Yeah, I figured it wasn't coincidence. Whatever you did, Tennyson, it set off detectors across half the galaxy. Including some very old, very secret ones in the Imperial vaults. Kai spoke up for the first time. The crystal I found, the one that transformed the Omnitrix, it had symbols that matched legends about dimensional gateways. If the Inkerseens have similar legends, then we're all talking about the same thing, Attea confirmed. The Draconids, what you'd call dragons, and the power they supposedly wielded to move between worlds. Max exchanged troubled glances with Patelade. And General Sang believes this power could be weaponized. Of course he does, Attea scoffed. He's an Inkerseen general. We see a new power. We want to control it. It's genetic. And you don't. Ben challenged, noting how carefully she'd separated herself from that motivation. Attea's expression hardened. What I want is my throne back and my father freed. If helping you stop Sang from tearing open the universe helps me accomplish that, then our interests temporarily align. How convenient, Ben muttered. Politics often is, she shot back. Look, I didn't come here because I suddenly developed warm feelings for humans. I came because you, she pointed at Ben, are now apparently the CENTER of whatever cosmic mess is unfolding, and being near you is my best chance for survival. And why should we help you? Patelade asked, his fish-like features set in a skeptical expression. The Inkerseen Empire hasn't exactly been friendly to Earth or the plumbers. Attea leaned forward, her voice dropping to a serious tone Ben had rarely heard from her. Because Sang doesn't just want to control this power, he wants to use it. The ancient texts speak of beings that devoured stars and breathed out worlds. If even a fraction of those legends are true, and he finds a way to harness that power. She let the implication hang in the air. The room fell silent as they considered her words. Finally, Max spoke. We'll need to verify your claims about the coup. In the meantime, you'll remain here under protective custody. Your guards can stay with you, but you'll all be restricted to designated areas. Attea nodded curtly. Fine, but don't take too long with your verification. Sang won't waste time consolidating power. And once he does, nowhere in this galaxy will be safe. Not for me, and not for anyone connected to, whatever that is. She nodded toward the Omnitrix. As he meeting concluded and plumbers escorted Attea to secure quarters, Ben hung back with Kai. You believe her? He asked quietly. Kai considered for a moment. About the coup, yes, she's genuinely afraid, though she hides it well. About her motivations, that's more complicated. Story of my life lately, Ben sighed, glancing down at the Omnitrix, which had finally stopped its unusual pulsing now that Attea had left the room. Everything about this is complicated. Later that afternoon, Ben found himself in one of the plumber base's training rooms, specifically reconfigured to test his new transformations capabilities. The chamber's walls were reinforced with energy-dampening technology, its ceiling high enough to accommodate flight practice, and various obstacles and TS had been arranged throughout the space. Azimuth observed from a protected observation booth, alongside Blukik and Dryba, the plumber's resident Galvan technicians. Their presence together would normally have been cause for sarcastic commentary from Ben, but today he was too focused on the task at hand. The Omnitrix appears to have stabilized into 5 distinct transformations, Azimuth explained through the communication system. Each representing a different aspect of draconic energy is interpreted through your DNA. 5. Ben confirmed, studying the holographic display that now appeared above the transformed device. Where once the Omnitrix had shown a wide array of alien forms, now 5 dragon-like silhouettes rotated in sequence. What happened to all my original aliens? They remain in the Matrix, Azimuth assured him, but are currently suppressed by the dominant dragon energy. In theory, as you master these new forms, the original transformations should gradually become accessible again. In theory, Ben repeated skeptically, and if the theory's wrong? Azimuth's silence was answer enough. Ben sighed and selected the form he'd already used, Dragonfire. The transformation washed over him. The now familiar sensation of expanding consciousness and enhanced perception settling into place as his body shifted into the massive, winged form. Commencing capability assessment, announced Blukik, activating the first series of targets, hovering drones that emitted varying levels of energy. Dragonfire exhaled a stream of golden flame that incinerated the nearest drone instantly. As more converged from different angles, he discovered he could modulate the intensity and focus of the fire, from wide-angle bursts that covered a large area to laser-precise beams that pierced smaller targets with surgical accuracy. Remarkable, Dryba commented, monitoring energy readings. The fire isn't actually combustion-based, it's a form of concentrated dimensional energy manifesting as thermal radiation. In English, Ben requested, banking sharply to avoid return fire from the drones. It's not regular fire, Blukik simplified. It's space-time energy that looks like fire. Which explains why it affects dimensional anomalies so effectively, Azimuth added. You're essentially using the same energy that creates the rifts to seal them, like fighting fire with fire, quite literally. Ben absorbed this as he continued the exercise, discovering new capabilities with each maneuver. His scales could harden almost instantaneously to deflect energy blasts. His GS could generate concussive force when beaten powerfully. Most surprisingly, he found he could sense energy patterns through walls and barriers, perceiving the electrical systems of the facility as glowing networks visible through solid matter. After 20 minutes of intensive testing, Azimuth called a halt. Let's try another transformation. The second in sequence appears to be a more compact form, possibly sacrificing flight for other abilities. Ben touched the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, cycling to the next form. The transformation felt different this time, less expansive but somehow denser. As if his mass was being compressed rather than expanded. When the golden light faded, he stood on 4 powerful legs, his body resembling a terrestrial dragon without wings. Heavily armored, with overlapping plates of crystalline scales, this form was shorter than Dragonfire but broader and more powerfully built. The scales themselves seemed to shift colors subtly with his movements, refracting light like living opals. Interesting, Ben said, his voice deeper and resonating strangely, as if speaking through crystal. I'll call this one Terradrake. Original naming conventions aside, Azimuth remarked dryly. This form appears to emphasize defensive capabilities and Earth-based powers. Let's test its resistance thresholds. The training room reconfigured, Heavier weapons s. Eastoms emerging from hidden compartments. Energy blasts of increasing intensity struck Ben from multiple angles, but the crystalline scales absorbed or deflected them with ease. When a particularly powerful blast did connect meaningfully, Ben felt the energy being stored within his scales rather than causing damage. Instinctively, he planted his feet firmly and channeled the absorbed energy back outward, not as fire this time, but as a shockwave that rippled through the floor, cracking the reinforced material and knocking the weapon systems off balance. Geomantic energy manipulation, Azimuth observed. An extraordinary defensive capabilities. This form would be particularly effective for containment and protection scenarios. Ben explored further, discovering he could burrow through solid matter with ease, his claws and scales cutting through the training room floor as if it were soft clay. More impressively, he found he could manipulate the earth itself, reshaping it with thought and touch. Enough, Azimuth called after Ben had thoroughly redesigned the training room's landscape. I believe we have sufficient data on this form for now. The repair costs are already becoming prohibitive. Ben transformed back to human form, feeling the now familiar disorientation as his senses recalibrated to normal parameters. The scale patterns on his skin glowed briefly before fading to nearly invisible marks, though they no longer disappeared completely as they had initially. These forms, he said, catching his breath, they're nothing like the alien transformations. It's like THEY already know what they're supposed to do, and I'm just channeling them rather than controlling them. Azimuth nodded thoughtfully. That aligns with my theory. These aren't simply new species dead to the Omnitrix database. They're manifestations of fundamental energy patterns that exist across multiple dimensions. In essence, you're tapping into archetypes rather than specific alien DNA. Which explains why they feel so natural, Ben realized, like they were already part of me somehow. Indeed, Azimuth's expression grew more serious. And it may also explain why others are so desperate to acquire this power. If the dragon energy is truly fundamental to reality itself, controlling it could theoretically allow manipulation of dimensional boundaries on an unprecedented scale. Ben was about to respond when alarms blared throughout the facility. He exchanged quick glances with Azimuth before rushing from the training room toward the command center, the Galvan following on his hovering platform. The command center was a flurry of activity when Ben arrived. Screens displayed multiple aerial views of Bellwood, where 3 sleek vessels of distinctly Inkersine design were descending toward the city center. Attack pattern? Ben asked, joining Grandpa Max at the main console. Not yet, Max replied, his expression grim. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. They're looking for Attea. On cue, the main screen switched to show the face of an Inkersine male with dark green skin and a scar running across his left eye. The elaborate insignia on his uniform marked him as a high-ranking officer. Attention Earth authorities and Plumber forces, he announced, his voice carrying the distinctive rasp of Inkersine military command. This is Colonel Vrix of the Imperial Guard. We have information that the traitor Attea has sought refuge on your planet. Surrender her immediately, or we will be forced to take action against your civilian population. Max activated the communication channel. This is Magister Maxwell Tennyson of Plumber Earth Headquarters. Your ships have entered Earth's protected space without authorization. Stand down and withdraw immediately. The Inkersine Colonel's expression darkened. The protection status granted to Earth by the Galactic Council has been suspended by the new Inkersine regime. You have 1 hour to surrender Attea, or we begin systematic destruction of your major cities, starting with the one directly below us. The transmission cut off abruptly. Can they actually do that? Ben asked. Suspend Earth's protection status. Not legally, Magister Patelade responded, but if there's been a successful coup and they've seized enough political leverage, they might have forced a temporary suspension pending review. It's happened before with regime changes. Either way, Max said grimly, we have Inkersine warships threatening a civilian population. We need to respond. I'll handle it, Ben stated, already moving toward the exit. Wait. The voice came from the doorway, where Attea stood flanked by plumber guards who looked uncertain about her presence there. This is exactly what Sang wants, to draw you out. Test your capabilities since the transformation. Ben paused. And we should believe you because I know how Inkersine military strategy works, she snapped. I was trained in it since hatching. Vrix is a loyalist. he wouldn't be working for Sang willingly. This is a setup. Max studied her carefully. Our intelligence has confirmed parts of your story. There has been a power shift within the Inkersine Empire, though details are still murky. Then believe me when I tell you this is a trap, Attea insisted. Sang doesn't care about me, I'm just bait to draw out whatever power triggered his sensors. She nodded toward the Omnitrix. That's what he really wants. Ben looked to his grandfather, who nodded slightly. What do you suggest then? Attea straightened, a hint of her royal bearing returning. Let me speak to Vrix. He served my father loyally for decades. If he's being coerced, I might be able to tell, maybe even turn him. And if he's not being coerced? Patelade asked skeptically. Then I still buy you time to prepare a proper response instead of charging in like Tennyson always does, she replied with a sidelong glance at Ben. Max considered briefly before nodding. We'll try it your way. But be aware that we're monitoring everything, and if this is some kind of double cross. Save the threats, Attea interrupted. Right now, our interests align perfectly. Neither of us wants those ships firing on the city. As the communication channel was prepared, Kai entered the command center, carrying a tablet filled with translation notes. She paused upon seeing Attea, then approached Ben. I've made progress with the symbols, she said quietly. There's a recurring pattern that seems to reference something called the conversion. CE, a time when the barriers between dragon realms and our dimension naturally thin. How often does this convergence happen? Ben asked. That's the concerning part. According to these calculations, approximately once every 10,000 years. She met his eyes meaningfully. The last recorded date would place the next occurrence. Now, Ben finished for her. Which explains why everything is happening at once. The crystal activating, the dimensional tears, Sang's coup. The stars are literally aligning, Kai confirmed. Whatever cosmic power we're dealing with, it's reaching some kind of critical moment. Their conversation was interrupted as the main screen activated, once again showing Colonel Vrix. This time, Attea stepped forward into the camera's view. Colonel, she greeted him. Her tone authoritative despite her circumstances. Interesting to see you taking orders from the usurper rather than maintaining your oath to the rightful emperor. Vrix's expression shifted subtly, surprise, followed by something that might have been regret. Princess Attea, you were ordered to surrender yourself immediately to imperial custody. On whose authority? She challenged. My father is the emperor. Has he ordered my arrest, or is it the traitor Sang speaking through you? The colonel's eye twitched, a tell that Attea clearly recognized. The political situation has evolved. Your father has recognized General Sang's leadership during this time of crisis. Evolved. Attea laughed sharply. You mean Sang has a vibro blade to his throat? Tell me, Colonel, how many of the old guard did he execute to secure your cooperation? How many loyal soldiers died because they wouldn't betray their oaths? Vrix's composure slipped momentarily. This is bigger than oaths, princess. The ancient power has awakened, the power our ancestors sought for millennia. The general merely acts to secure it for the empire before others can claim it. And you believe he'll share this power once he has it? Attea pressed. Sang has always craved the throne. This is his opportunity to seize not just the empire but dominion over reality itself. For a moment, doubt flickered across Vrix's features. Then his expression hardened again. My orders stand. Surrender yourself, and the human who possesses the dragon power, or we attack. Ben stepped into view beside Attea. That's not going to happen, Colonel. But I'm giving you one chance to withdraw your ships before I remove them myself. Vrix studied Ben with obvious interest, his gaze fixing on the Omnitrix. So it's true. The power has bonded with the Omnitrix wielder. He raised a hand to someone off-screen. Target weapons on the human population center. Commence countdown to. Ben cut the transmission with a gesture. So much for diplomacy. It was worth trying, Max said, already activating defense protocols. But now we need action. Ben. On it, Ben confirmed, moving toward the exit. Kai, stay here and keep working on those translations. We need to understand what we're dealing with. And me? Attea asked, crossing her arms. Going to lock me up while you play hero? Ben paused, studying her with new consideration. Despite everything, She'd genuinely tried to prevent an attack on Earth's civilians, something the old Attea might not have bothered with. You know Inkerseen battle tactics, he said finally. How would you counter 3 warships in a civilian area? A surprised smile curved Attea's lips. Divide their attention. Force them to split their forces rather than concentrate firepower. Ben nodded. Then that's the plan. You stay here with tactical oversight. Grandpa. Keep her on a short leash, but listen to her suggestions. She knows her people better than we do. Without waiting for further discussion, Ben raced through the corridors and up to the launch bay, where Gwen and Kevin were already waiting beside a specialized plumber vehicle. Took you long enough, Kevin commented, tossing Ben a communications earpiece. We heard the situation. Frog people trying to blow up the city again. Something like that, Ben confirmed, sliding the earpiece into place. New plan. We split up. 3 ships, 3 targets. Gwen frowned. Ben, are you sure? We're usually more effective as a team. Trust me on this. Ben activated the Omnitrix, cycling to the 3rd transformation he hadn't yet tested. Time to see what else this thing can do. The transformation sequence enveloped him in golden light. This form felt different immediately, lighter, more agile, with RGY crackling along neural pathways he didn't previously possess. When the light faded, he stood before them as a sleek, serpentine dragon with iridescent scales in shades of blue and white. Electrici. Tie arced between the spines that ran along his back, and his wings were less substantial than dragonfires, almost like solidified lightning rather than membrane. Stormworm. He named himself, his Vo. Ice carrying a harmonic resonance that made the air vibrate. Perfect for what we need. Kevin whistled appreciatively. Okay, that's actually pretty cool. Through the comms, Attea's voice came through clearly. The ships are moving into attack formation. You need to disrupt their coordination before they establish a triangulation lock on the city center. Copy that, Ben responded, his new Orm allowing him to process tactical information with surprising clarity. Gwen, take the eastern ship. Your mana shields can block their weapons while you disable their propulsion systems. Kevin, the western ship has weaker hull plating near its atmospheric intakes, hit it there. I'll take the command vessel in the center. Gwen created a mana platform beneath herself. Be careful, Ben. We don't know the full capabilities of your new forms yet. That makes 2 of us, he replied with a grin that displayed rows of electricity-charged teeth. But I'm looking forward to finding out. With that, he launched himself skyward, his new form cutting through the air with incredible speed. Electricity crackled in his wake, ionizing the atmosphere around him in a trail of blue-white energy. The INCUR Sean ships had taken position in a triangular formation above downtown Bellwood, their weapons systems glowing ominously as they prepared to fire. Citizens below were already evacuating, streams of vehicles clogging exit routes from the city center. Ben reached the command ship first, circling it at speeds that made him nearly invisible to tracking systems. He could sense the electrical RNS within the vessel, its power distribution, weapons systems, and even the life signs of the Inkerseen crew members. Attention Inkerseen vessel, he transmitted on all frequencies. This is your final warning to withdraw. The ship responded by firing an energy beam toward a commercial district below. Ben intercepted it midair, his electrical field absorbing and dispersing the energy in a spectacular display of crackling power. Have it your way, he muttered, then dove directly at the ship's main sensor array. As Stormworm, Ben discovered he could generate and control electrical energy with unprecedented precision. He discharged a focused electromagnetic pulse that overwhelmed the ship's guidance systems, sending it veering off course and away from populated areas. Through his enhanced senses, he could monitor Gwen and Kevin's progress with the other vessels. Gwen had encased one ship in a mana field that prevented its weapons from firing, while Kevin had managed to board the 3rd ship by absorbing its hull material and cutting his way inside. Ben, came Kai's voice through the comms, the translations show these ships might be equipped with dimensional sensors, technolo. GY designed to detect and possibly manipulate the same energy you're using. Meaning, Ben asked, narrowly avoiding counter fire from the command ship's secondary weapons. Meaning they might be let to use your own power against you, or worse, harness it somehow. As if confirming her warning, Ben felt a strange pulling sensation as the command ship activated a previously hidden system. A dish-like apparatus extended from its underside, emitting a frequency that resonated painfully with his draconic form. "They're trying to drain your energy." Attea's voice came urgently through the comms. "It's an adaptation of ancient Incursine tech designed to capture and store energy beings." Ben tried to pull away, but the resonance field strengthened, drawing him inexorably toward the ship. The Dracomnitrix symbol on his chest flickered erratically as the device attempted to maintain the transformation against the external interference. In desperation, Ben did something counterintuitive. Instead of fighting the pull, he accelerated toward it, directly at the dish apparatus. As he approached, he concentrated all his electrical energy into a single, devastating surge. The resulting explosion shattered the dish and overloaded the ship's power systems simultaneously. Alarms blared within the vessel as emergency protocols activated, and Ben used the momentary chaos to attack the ship's main engines. With precision strikes of concentrated lightning, he disabled the propulsion systems while carefully avoiding the critical life support and emergency controls. The massive ship began a controlled descent toward an unpopulated area outside the city. "Command vessel neutralized," he reported, watching as plumber containment teams moved in to secure the landing site. "Western ship contained," Kevin confirmed. "Though I might have been a little rough on the crew." "Eastern ship surrendering," Gwen added. "They're powering down weapons and requesting terms." Ben allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before a warning flashed across his enhanced senses, an energy buildup unlike anything he'd detected before, coming from the command ship despite its apparently disabled state. "Something's wrong," he transmitted. "The command ship is..." His warning was cut short as a pulse of crimson energy erupted from the vessel, not directed at the city but at Ben himself. The beam struck him directly, and unlike the previous attempt to drain his energy, this one seemed designed to destabilize the Dracomnitrix specifically. Pain lanced through Ben's form as the transformation began to break down. The Dracomnitrix symbol sparked and fluctuated, and he felt himself shifting uncontrollably between dragon form and human. "Ben!" Multiple voices called through the comms as he plummeted toward the ground, unable to maintain flight with his form destabilizing. In the seconds before impact, a monoplatform materialized beneath him, Gwen, racing to his rescue. But the platform shattered as his partially transformed body crashed through it, the conflicting energies too volatile for her powers to fully contain. The last thing Ben remembered was a flash of golden light as the Dracomnitrix executed an emergency protocol. And then darkness claimed him. Consciousness returned slowly, accompanied by the steady beep of medical monitoring equipment. Ben opened his eyes to find himself in the plumber headquarters medical bay, various sensors attached to his chest and the Dracomnitrix. "Welcome back," said Kai, who sat beside his bed with an open tablet displaying more translation work. "You've been unconscious for 6 hours. Ben attempted to sit up, wincing at the soreness that permeated his entire body. "The ships, the city, all secure," she assured him. "The Incursine vessels have been contained. And Colonel Vrix is in custody. No civilian casualties." Relief washed over him, followed quickly by concern as he examined the Dracomnitrix. The device appeared intact but was cycling through color patterns he hadn't seen before: reds, blues, golds, and greens pulsing in seemingly random sequences. "And this?" he asked, lifting his wrist. "Azimuth's been monitoring it remotely. He says the destabilization was temporary, a targeted attack designed to disrupt the specific frequency of the dragon transformations." She hesitated. "But there were side effects." Ben didn't need to ask what she meant. Looking down at his arms, he could see the scale patterns were now permanently visible, subtle but unmistakable, shimmering faintly in the medical bay's lighting. "How bad is it?" "Your DNA is stabilizing again, but with more permanent draconic characteristics integrated than before. Azimuth says the attack actually accelerated the merger that was already happening gradually." Ben absorbed this information with surprising calm. Perhaps he'd already accepted on some level that his transformation was irreversible. "Where's Attea?" he asked after a moment. "Debriefing with Magister Tennyson. Her tactical advice was instrumental in countering the Incursine attack." Kai's expression suggested complex feelings about this development. "She's actually requesting to speak with you when you're recovered." Before Ben could respond, the medical bay door slid open to admit Azimuth, hovering on his platform with a hollow display of complex data projecting before him. The Inkersine weapon was more sophisticated than I anticipated, the Galvan stated without preamble. It was specifically calibrated to interact with dragon energy frequencies, techno. OGY far beyond current Inkersine capabilities. Meaning they had help, Ben concluded. Precisely. Someone with intimate knowledge of dimensional mechanics and dragon energy provided General Sang W. ITH both the sensors to detect the energy and weapons to manipulate it. Azimuth's expression grew even more serious. I've completed analysis of the command ship's computer core. They weren't trying to simply disable your transformations. Ben. Then what were they trying to do? Extract a specific energy signature, one that would allow them to locate what they're calling the Prime Dragon. Muth manipulated his hollow display to show a star chart with a specific sector highlighted. According to their data, the Prime Dragon is a being of immense power currently dormant in a pocket dimensio. Accessible only during the convergence. Kai sat forward. That matches my translations exactly. The ancient texts refer to the great worm between worlds that sleeps until the stars align. And Sang wants to wake it up, Ben guessed. Why? Even for a power-hungry general, that seems risky. Because whoever awakens the Prime Dragon supposedly gains control over its power, Kai explained. Quote, the texts describe it as binding the will of the cosmic serpent to reshape reality itself. Ben was about to respond when the facility's alarms activated once more. He moved to get up, but Azimuth gestured for him to remain still. It's not an attack, the Galvan explained. Our sensors are detecting a massive spike in dimensional energy, the largest since your transformation. The medical bay door opened again as Grandpa Max hurried in, his expression grave. Ben, you need to see this. Despite protests from the medical staff, Ben disconnected the monitoring equipment and followed his grandfather to the command center. Gwen, Kevin, and Attea were already there, watching the main screen with expressions ranging from awe to apprehension. The display showed a real-time image of the night sky above Bellwood, where the stars appeared to be moving. Constellations shifted before their eyes, rearranging into patterns that matched symbols from the ruins Kai had been studying. The convergence, Kai whispered. It's accelerating. As they watched, the stars aligned into a distinct pattern, a serpentine form that stretched across the visible sky, its head pointing toward a specific location on Earth. Sensors are detecting a dimensional tear forming at these coordinates, a technician reported, highlighting a location in the northern desert region. Energy readings are off the charts. That's directly above the ruins where I found the crystal, Kai realized. Ben felt the Omnitrix pulse in response to the cosmic alignment, its cycling colors stabilizing into a steady golden glow. Whatever connection had been forged between the device and these cosmic events was growing stronger. We need to get there, he stated firmly. Before Sang does. Already on it, Max confirmed. A team is being assembled. And we've notified all plumber assets in the region. Ben turned to find Attea watching him with an unreadable expression. I assume you're coming along. Since our interests still, temporarily align. Quote, she straightened, attempting to project her usual confidence despite the lingering evidence of her ordeal. Someone needs to make sure you don't mess this up, Tennyson. Besides, I have a personal score to settle with Sang now. We leave in 20 minutes, Max announced. Ben, are you sure you're recovered enough for this? Ben glanced down at the Omnitrix, feeling the power that now flowed constantly through his veins. The merger of human and dragon was progressing, changing him in ways he was only beginning to understand. But one thing remained, constant, his determination to protect his world, regardless of what he might be becoming. I'm sure, he replied, meeting his grandfather's concerned gaze steadily. Whatever's happening, whatever I'm turning into, I'm still me. And I'm still a hero. As the team dispersed to prepare for departure, Kai approached Ben quietly. There's something else in the translations I didn't mention earlier. A prophecy about the convergence. Let me guess. Doom and destruction if the wrong person controls this prime dragon power. She shook her head slowly. Not exactly. It speaks of a guardian who owns, neither human nor dragon but the bridge between realms. A being capable of either sealing the dimensional barriers forever or tearing them down completely. Ben looked at her sharply. And which am I supposed to be? The one who seals or the one who destroys? That's just it, Kai replied, her dark eyes meeting his. The prophecy doesn't say. It only says that when the stars align and the prime dragon awakens, the guardian will make a choice that determines the fate of all realities. Ben fell silent, the weight of this revelation settling over him like a physical burden. As he gazed at the transformed sky through the command center's viewport, the draconic constellation seemed to stare back at him, a cosmic entity that had perhaps set this path in motion millennia before his birth. In the reflection of the glass, he caught a glimpse of himself, the increasingly prominent scale patterns on his skin, the subtle glow of his eyes, the aura of power that now surrounded him visibly to those who knew to look for it. The changes were accelerating, driven by cosmic forces beyond his understanding. Yet beneath it all, beneath the transformations and prophecies and dimensional energies, he was still Ben Tennyson. And whatever choice awaited him at the convergence point, he would face it as he had faced every challenge since that fateful summer day when he found the Omnitrix, with courage, determination, and an unshakable sense of responsibility. As the team prepared for departure, a final alert came through the system, a massive ship entering Earth's atmosphere directly above the desert coordinates. The vessel dwarfed the previous Inkerseen craft, its design unlike anything in Plummer records. Sang, Attea confirmed grimly. He's found the convergence point. Ben's eyes narrowed as he studied the massive ship, the Dracomnitrix pulsing in time with his accelerated heartbeat. Then it's time he found me too. Chapter 2 End. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.